Hey guys, what's happening? It's Jay from Sony Alpha Lab, and what I got here is the Sony RX100 Mark V. Now, it's the updated version, so it's the 5A, and basically what you're looking at is a super high quality, ultra compact camera. Okay, it fits in your pocket, all right? That's what the RX100 series is. Now, this particular model goes for about $1,000. The latest model is the Mark VI, that goes for $1,200. This particular unit has a 24 to 70 millimeter f1.8 to f2.8 Zeiss lens. The Mark VI has a 24 to 200 millimeter, so it's got much more telephoto reach, but at the cost of a slower aperture. The Mark VI is f2.8 to f4.5. Also, minimum focus distance, you can get 5 centimeters to a subject. With this camera, the Mark V, you're looking at 8 centimeters with the Mark VI. So, you know, that's just a difference that I wanted to make you aware of. So basically you're looking at a 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor in this thing, so it has a very large sensor considering how small this camera is. So the Mark V can record 4K video, but only in 5-minute clips maximum. It can do 5-minute clips in a row. It can't do any more than that consecutively because the camera will overheat due to its ultra compact size, is what Sony says. So they do limit the 4K recording to only 5-minute clips, unfortunately. This is a turnkey solution, so you got everything you need built in, all right? It has a pop-up viewfinder, okay, which is awesome for really bright conditions. Now, on the new model, the pop-up viewfinder opens up automatically. On the Mark VI, this one you still have to pull it out, all right? So just to be aware of. This still has the older OLED viewfinder, but Sony did update it so it's less laggy. So they increased the refresh rate lag. Now also there's a pop-up flash on this unit, so you don't have to worry about carrying a flash. And the screen fully articulates, so selfie mode. All right, so the selfie mode feature is really good for, you know, vlogging and things like that, taking pictures with your kids. I really like that feature. Now, it does not have a touch screen. The Mark VI does have a touch screen, so that's a negative, but you know, it's $200 cheaper. Another thing the Mark V-A has that the Mark VI doesn't is a built-in 3-stop ND filter, and that will allow you to slow the shutter down in bright conditions. It'll also allow you to slow the shutter down to get that silky water look. Good for video in particular, for keeping the shutter speed at a certain frame rate. The RX100 Mark V also has a very fast autofocus system which allows you to track subjects at 24 frames per second. That is absolutely remarkable. That's faster than the Sony A9 can even do. That's really impressive, 24 frames per second. So, you know, a pitcher pitching, a batter batting, you know, anything super high speed like that, this is going to be able to track and take those shots for 233 shots in a row. That's really amazing stuff. And you can actually take those 24 frames per second and turn it into a video if you wanted to. That's how many frames that is. So that's really remarkable, okay? This camera only weighs 10.5 ounces, okay? That's extremely lightweight considering the amount of power, and it's really well made as well. It feels like a little brick in your hands. Now, ergonomics kind of suck. It's a little awkward to hold, but they do make this cool grip here that you can stick on, and that gives you a much firmer grab. So I recommend getting that just to make the ergonomics a little better, okay? I also put the strap on just in case, you know, you get bumped or something, you know, so you don't drop it, because there's really not much to grab onto in that regard, all right? This also has Wi-Fi and NFC built in, so you can hook your cell phone up and just suck the images off. It also has an HDMI out on the side, so you can plug in an external monitor or an external recording device if you want. Now, the battery life on the RX100 series cameras is pretty poor. You're only gonna get about 220 shots, something like that. So you're going to want to get a couple extra batteries, all right? The Mark V-A has a couple features that the original Mark V didn't have. One of them is new metering modes. There's 2 new metering modes, highlight and average, the entire screen average. Highlight's great for super bright subjects if you need to meter for bright things. The highlight metering mode is a cool upgrade. Another upgrade that Sony made was they added a My Menu area. That's a fantastic feature, a welcomed upgrade. The menu system on the Sony camera is so vast and deep, you really need a favorites area or a My Menu area where you can load up all the features that you use most often, and then you can just go to that area and get what you need. If you need some other, you know, obscure feature, you can dig through the menu system and find it, but the My Menu area is really great, and it made it a lot easier to use the menu system. The Mark V-A can also record proxy media. Now, if you do a lot of video editing, That's a nice feature. If you don't want to have the computer create the proxy media for you, you can just have it done on camera, and then when you import the video, you already have your proxy media. So it'll speed up your workflow a little bit if you're a proxy video user. One negative on the Mark 5A is they got rid of the Play Memories camera apps. Sony's no longer supporting those for newer cameras, unfortunately. So this one does not have it. Now I have a hands-on how to use the camera video, so check that out if you want to learn how to use this camera in more detail. I'm going to try to keep this review fairly quick, so I created a separate video on how to use the camera. Now it is for the Mark 6, but it's basically exactly the same as this camera, so don't worry about that. Just check it out and you'll learn how to use the camera if you're brand new to Sony cameras or brand new to the RX100 series cameras. I walk you through step by step for beginners, okay? So check that video out for that. Another feature that this camera offers is high frame rate mode. It's a really powerful slow motion feature, and slow motion footage is really cool. If you've never taken it, you know, it's definitely a nice feature. If you're not interested in that, well, you don't need that feature, but this camera does a pretty good job. It goes all the way up to 960 frames per second, but that quality is pretty crappy. The 240 frames per second quality is really good. The better light you have, the better the slow motion is gonna look, okay? So if you're recording in 240 frames per second, the shutter speed needs to be at 240 frames per second. So the ISO is gonna get pushed up in order to make the shutter speed, you know, that frame rate. So keep that in mind. The better the light, the better the slow-mo footage is gonna look, okay? So it's very important that the lighting is good if you want really good quality slow-mo, all right? Another cool feature is how the lens cap is built in. I don't know what you call that style lens cap, but that's kind of cool that you don't have to put on a lens cap. You don't have to worry about losing it. I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was a cool feature. The focus during video is awesome on this camera. It tracks really well. As you can see behind me in the lab, I went from the coin to the lab scene back to the coin, and the focus is very smooth, the transitions, it's very responsive, and that's actually configurable in the camera. You can change the response rate and focus transition speed, as well as the zoom speed. You can change the zoom speed from normal to fast. So if you want to zoom in and out faster, you can change that in the camera. I personally like it on the slower zoom, but it's nice to know that that feature's there. All right, so in the lab here, I just took a couple of test photos so you can see what kind of zoom range you're looking at. So here's wide open at 24 millimeter approximately. And then when you zoom in, this is approximately 34 millimeter, 35 millimeter. Now we're looking at 50 millimeter, and here is 70 millimeter. And you can see the sharpness is remarkable across the board. That Zeiss lens is phenomenal. F1.8 is a little bit softer, but other than that, the optics are remarkable. So again, here's 70 millimeter. I just wanted to show you the clear image zoom. That basically gives you an effective 140 millimeter, okay? And look at how good it looks. So this is an effective 140 millimeter, and you can see, let me just go to 1:1 here. I was at 2:1. You can see just how good it looks. I mean, you can see every little bit of detail in that dollar bill pretty much, and it looks really, really good, okay? So that's a digital zoom, but it's a really good digital zoom, okay? So I would make sure to turn the clear image zoom on. So you'd have optical plus clear image zoom, and then digital zoom is beyond that. I leave that turned off because that actually, you notice that the image doesn't look as good with the full-fledged digital zoom. So here's a couple of minimum focus distance testing shots. I wanted to show you how the background renders, okay? Now look at the difference between f2.8 and f1.8. Here's f1.8, f2.8. So you see how much buttery, like how much better the 1.8 is? Now, here's another image just looking at the side of the coin. And again, here's f1.8. Now here's f2.8. You see the difference? I mean, it's a big difference, especially when at the minimum focus distance like we are here. It's very noticeable, which is why I'm showing you these shots so you can see for yourself. Again, here's f2.8 and here's f1.8. All right, looking at ISO, I wanted to show you how good this camera handles ISO for the 1-inch sensor size. All right, so here we're looking at the native ISO 125, and if I zoom in here, you can see it's extremely clean. If I go to 2:1, you can see here on the black circuit boards, they're extremely clean, and the crayons and stuff, it looks quite good. Now, as I go up, this is ISO 800, okay? I just skipped over because ISO 800 is where you first start to see the noise come in. You could barely see it, but it definitely is here, all right? And you could notice it more on the blacks, it seems like. So when we scroll here, let's go to 1600. You can see the noise really starts to come in, and you can see it a little easier over here. But notice how the color still looks perfect. I mean, it renders the colors flawlessly. And if we go to 3200, again, you could see the colors look great. 6400 is when you really start to notice the noise kick in. This is like basically the threshold of now I see it, you know? So if you're taking pictures of people and things like that, ISO 6400 is really where you're gonna start to notice, in my opinion. Now, if I zoom into 2:1, you can definitely see it pretty clearly. If I go back to 1:1, it's not as noticeable, but it is there. So this is a raw file. This noise can be corrected, okay? I just want you to I want to show you what the camera can actually do in raw. If I was shooting JPEG, you wouldn't see the noise as much, but it would do a noise correction filter and it would like smooth the image out a little bit. You'll see what I mean in a second. So let me go here to 12,800. Now, this one is pretty noisy, okay? This is where you can clearly see the noise, and it's almost to the point where you're like, I wouldn't really want to use this unless I had to. But again, when you zoom out and you look at it, you're like, nah, you know, depending on what you're going to do with the image, it's totally usable. I mean, if you're going to print it huge, then no. But if you're just going to, you know, share it on the web, or you're just trying to capture something, like just for documentary purposes or whatever the case may be, it's totally usable. It just definitely has more noise, you know, so be aware. Now, the high ISO multi-shot noise reduction feature is what I used here. And this is ISO 25,600. So let me zoom in. Now just look how clean this looks. You have to be in JPEG mode to use this feature, by the way. And it definitely smooths it over. So it's not as sharp, you know, per se. It's like you could see it almost looks like it's painted or something. But it did a really good job cleaning up the noise. So that's a great feature in a pinch. Actually, the camera takes multiple shots when you do it, so you got to kind of hold it pretty steady, but it cancels out almost all the noise. Now here's the same exact feature, but this time I lowered it to 12,800. Here's what 12,800 looks like, and it looks noticeably better than the 25,600 as far as the colors are concerned. You can see the color shift difference here. You see that? The 25,000, it shifted everything a little bit to the green. But here on the 12,000, it looks more like a calibrated color, like it's supposed to be. All right, guys, let's check out some real world photos. So what we're looking at here is the town of Crawford had a cool sign, and it's just a real world shot at 70 millimeter equivalent, f2.8, so that's wide open. You can see the sharpness is really good. And here's just a depth of field fall off type of shot, so you can see how the background renders here on the right side and the colors and stuff. Then here now, the built-in ND filter is an awesome option because I was able to get this silky water. I wouldn't be able to get this 1.6 second exposure without that built-in ND filter, okay? So I enabled the ND filter in the menu and it slowed the shutter way down, 3 stops, okay? So you can also change the aperture to like f11 and stuff and f9 and higher numbers to slow it down, but that's oftentimes not enough. The built-in ND filter allows you to get stuff like this. Makes a tremendous difference. Here's another angle, and you can just see how cool that silky water looks. And that's a, let's see, this is a 2-second exposure, okay? Now here's another example. I turned the ND filter off, but kept the camera at f11, all right? So that gave me a 1/4 second shutter speed, all right? So you can see what the water looks like. It looks pretty cool at a 1/4 second, but check out what it looks like at 2 full seconds. You see that? So it's like a little bit choppy looking here. It's still, you know, a little bit of motion there, but here it just silks right out, all right? So that's that silky water effect. So here's just a quick zoom test here. This is basically 24 millimeter, and then I zoomed into 70 so you can see, you know, what kind of range, you know? So there's 24, zoomed all the way in, there's 70. Now here's a pano, and the camera has pano mode on the top there. You could put it into panoramic mode, and this is the default setting. It gives you this wide, you know, pano crop, and you basically just hold the camera and hit the button and it goes da 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 da, and it just keeps firing as you go. And you just have to go at the right speed. It takes a little bit of practice to do, but once you get it down, you can get some killer panos. And you can see right here, this one came out really good. If I zoom in, you could see the detail, how sharp it is. This is extremely high resolution because it's a lot of images stitched together. All right, if I actually go to info, yeah, 7064 by 1600. See what I'm saying? That's really high resolution right there. All right, and here's just an image taken, just a single frame, and you can see the form there in the distance, and you can see the sharpness and clarity and everything is really good. This was taken at f4. Now this is just a close-up, I just wanted to show you the depth of field fall off and the sharpness. So this is real world sharpness at f1.8, and you can see it's very good. And the depth of field is awesome too. The background blurred right out, and the background was basically the grass on the ground, and this weed was just sticking up a little bit. And here's just another one. And these are raw files. So this one is untouched. This one I did play with a little bit. I just dragged the blacks a little bit down just to give it a little more contrast. And this is just a lawn ornament. And it's really cool looking. It has all these flakes in there. Now this is a high ISO image. This is ISO 12,800. Okay, so I just wanted to zoom in here so you can see what kind of detail you're looking at in the real world. And you can see it's okay, you know, it's not terrible, but it's not the greatest. So if you drag the shadows up, you can bring a little more detail back, but you can see how that purple, you know, and stuff comes in. There's only so much you can do. This is what the image looked like when I imported it, okay? And then I was able to pull out all this information in Lightroom. So that's how powerful the raw file is, okay? So if I go back to import, and I'm just gonna show you this real quick. So first thing you can do is you can bring the shadows up quite a bit to bring out some of that detail, and then you can bring the highlights down a little bit to recover the sky. Then you can drag the vibrance up, like so. But then you can see, you know, a before and after, and that's really impressive. That's dynamic range. That's basically what the raw file actually contains. The bench detail looks really good, even though I pulled that out of the shadows. All right, so here's another image I just wanted to show you, and I pulled back a little bit on it. So here's the original, and you can see the sky's blown out because I was shooting into the sun, and I basically just did those same tricks where I lowered the exposure a little bit, and the highlights, shadows, raised the shadows up, then I added a little vibrance, raised a little more shadows, and then just cropped it a little bit. This is a fully edited photo, and it came out pretty good. Like I said, here's a raw file I slightly tweaked in Lightroom and then brought it into Photoshop and did this to it. Here's another one I edited. Just wanted to show you what that ND filter can do, and this gave me a 6-second exposure. So I was shooting at f8, ISO 125, and with that ND filter I was able to get it to 6 seconds. So that created that cool swirling water capture effect here, okay? So these are HDRs. Now this is multiple exposures, so I used a bracketing feature on the RX100 5A, and I basically took a -2 exposure, a 0 exposure, which is a regular exposure, and then a +2 exposure, and then I combined them using HDR Effects Pro, okay? And this is the result. So it came out pretty good. Now here's that swirling water shot I just showed you, but then I combined it with 2 other images. So it looks a little bit messy here where the water spins around, but the overall result's pretty cool. And here's a couple more images, and they look, you know, they look fully edited. They're like, you know, a little magical looking, but these are fully edited HDR files, okay? So I just wanted to show you that a camera like the Sony RX100 5 is totally capable of taking hardcore HDR photos, just like a professional grade camera, you know? So just because it's small and compact doesn't mean you can't do stuff like this. So I really wanted to show you guys what kind of stuff you can get using a camera. This, like I said, this is a really, really high quality camera, okay? And just a few more here. All right, here's another one, and that's the last one. So I also wanted to show you, I took a couple of photos with the flash and without the flash, and this was Layla, and I got Jace on the swing in the background, and you can see this image came out really good. It's nice and sharp, but the ISO is pretty high. It was 1600. So then I turned the flash on, and Layla's making a funny face, but you can see the ISO lowered way down, and I was able to get a nice sharp shot with the flash. So the flash worked really good in this scenario. And here's one of Jace I took. The flash also worked pretty good in this shot. And here's the same shot pretty much without the flash. Okay, so you can see his face is really dark and the background's much brighter. And then in this one, it exposed for his face, so the background's much darker, okay? Here's the flash inside. It works pretty good at this range. Now, here's just a picture of a sandwich, and I wanted to show you what it looked like without the flash and then with the flash. But notice on the bottom how you can see the lens shadow. And that's because I was so close to the subject when I was taking this shot. So the lens on the front of the camera, when you turn it on, you know, it sticks out that little bit. So the flash, you know, like the shadow of the flash is what happened here on this shot. So I just wanted to show you guys that. I used a couple modes here. This is just a default RAW file here. I just wanted to show you what this looks like as a RAW. And then here's an image with illustration mode. And illustration mode's awesome. It gives it this artistic effect, And this is actually a picture effect mode, okay? You gotta be in JPEG quality, and you go into the picture effects, and then you scroll through, and there's all these different effects. Well, this is illustration mode. This one is HDR painting, I believe it's called, and it gives a pretty cool effect there. And this one is soft focus, so the soft focus effect, and it does a really good job. This would look cool as a portrait. This one is pop, so it jacks up the sharpness, jacks up the saturation, and things like that. And you can see the image really does have some pop to it, you know? Bones Jones! And here's another one of Bonesy using that pop feature. But again, the illustration mode, you see how it does to the wood and everything? It's really cool. That's what we're looking at with this camera, guys. You know, it's a really high quality camera. It's a lot of money, $800 pretty much, but you do get a lot for that money, you know, 24 frames per second. The features are very rich on this camera, and it's really, really high quality. So let's see the RX100 here. That has the 24 to 200 millimeter lens, and that's a phenomenal camera. I just reviewed it, so check out my review. You have the Sony RX100 that's what we're looking at right here. But then you have the RX100 Now the 4 is a great camera. It's very similar to the 5, all right? Now the difference is you got 16 frames per second, okay? And some of the other features that I mentioned earlier on the review, like the newer My Menu and stuff like that, it doesn't have. But otherwise, the camera is basically the same. It's got the same sensor. This one is $1,000. This one's $800 right now. It's $100 off. Things I would like to see different about the camera. I would like to see a touchscreen. I wish the flash came up a little bit higher so you didn't get that shadow on there. The battery life, I wish the battery life was better. The biggest selling point of this is that it fits in your pocket and you have that Pro Power. So you're getting both, okay, in this ridiculously small package. So that's one of the reasons why this costs more than the competition, and the features are just better, okay? The sensor is better. The optics are really high quality. That's pretty much it for this review. So be sure to check out my how-to videos if you want to learn more on how to use this camera. I did a whole bunch of videos on the RX100 and also the RX10 which is basically the same camera. It's just a different camera body. But the guts of it are the same sensors, same menu, same features. Okay, the camera itself is just a little bit different. But those how-to videos are below this video. Oh, here, let me show you. All right, so if you go to my YouTube page here and you click on like this video, for example, here. Right below the video here, there's going to be a show more option. It depends on what you're looking at. If you're on a tablet, it's going to look different than this. But basically, you just click this show more, or you might have to click a little arrow on the right side to expand the view. And then you'll see all these links, okay? And I have all these other videos and tutorials right here, the how-tos. You see that? So that's where those are, and I appreciate you guys using the links if you're shopping. You know, the support, I really appreciate it. It helps a lot. It helps keep the channel going. Also, be sure to give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. Also, be sure to subscribe. That's pretty much it. So I will catch up with you guys next time. All right, have a great day. Take care.